Okay, let's read some sources. I have here Ma Duolin's description of travel routes, source number 1, as well as a copy of the big bookmark. While I read, I'm going to use the questions on this bookmark to help me make sense of the source. We'll start with the headnote and the attribution, or the top of the bookmark, focusing in on these questions about who created the source, when and where it was created, what kind of source it is, and why it might have been created. When we find that information, we're going to circle it. In the attribution it says, modified for Ma Duolin. So I'm going to circle Ma Duolin. He's the author. And although the headnote will tell us more, I already know from day 1 from our background building slides that he was a historian. And I'm thinking about the fact that historians are experts on the past. In order to study and learn about the past, they conduct a lot of research. They read a lot of documents and artifacts in order to come up with some interpretation of what happened in the past. So they're sort of experts. He wrote this in China, that's the where, around 1300. And I also know from our background building slides that 1300 was during the Mongol Empire along the Silk Road. With a partner, read through the headnote and circle any additional information about who created the source and what was happening at the time. All right, now it's time to move on to the source itself, or the middle part of the bookmark. What did Ma Duolin write? And for this source, we're just going to use this third question or bullet point about what key ideas come after transition words and phrases. So we're going to find transition words and phrases, here are some examples, and then underline what comes after them. It says, to take the shorter desert route, comma, that's a transition phrase. You have to cross a plain of sand that extends for more than 300 miles. So I'm going to underline that sentence. You see nothing in any direction but the sky and sands without the slightest trace of a road. Travelers find nothing to guide them but the bones of men and beasts and the droppings of camels. During the passage through this wilderness, that's kind of a transition phrase, during the passage through this wilderness, you hear sounds, sometimes of singing, sometimes of crying. It has often happened that travelers had tried to see what those sounds might be and have wandered from their course and been entirely lost. The sounds are the voices of spirits and goblins. For these reasons, that's a transition phrase, travelers and merchants often prefer the much longer route north of the mountains. So these transition phrases have highlighted a contrast here. The author is kind of beginning by talking about the shorter route, which seems like that's where you'd want to go. It's shorter. And then it compares it to the longer route. And in the end, he says, more people take the longer route. So I'm going to say the longer route is more popular. And it seems that more people take the longer route because on the shorter route, there's some scary stuff. You see the bones of men and beasts, and you hear sounds like crying and singing. So I'm going to say the shorter route is more dangerous. Or scary, maybe, according to Ma Duolin. Now that we've read the source, let's go on to after you read. With a partner, discuss this question. What does Ma Duolin help us understand about the Silk Road? Write 1 to 2 sentences. Now it's time for us to reason about the evidence and decide how reliable this source is for teaching others about the ancient Silk Road. Or for learning about the ancient Silk Road. And we can use these questions on the back of the bookmark to help us reason about the evidence. So, one reason that this source might be reliable, I'm going to say, is that the author, Ma Duolin, is a historian who used a lot of documents to write this. That makes me kind of trust him. He did a lot of research in order to come up with this, what he wrote here. With a partner, come up with one other reason why Ma Dua-Lin might be a reliable source of information. Okay, one reason that the source might be unreliable, there are parts of this that sound a little bit like a fairy tale. You know, he might be exaggerating a little bit when he talks about the bones of men and beasts and the sounds or the voices of spirits and goblins. So, I don't know, this doesn't seem real. Parts of it, maybe. Makes me wonder if he was exaggerating, or maybe makes me wonder about who he was writing for, too. They're almost like a fairy tale. Now it's your turn. Come up with one other reason why Ma Dua-Lin might not be the most reliable source about the Silk Road. When you finish, box the parts of the source that help you think about this central question. So box anything, it could be something you've already circled or underlined, or not, that helps you think about which sources are most reliable for learning about the Silk Road.